Hello again, people who read and who choose to watch my channel. Have not posted in a while. I plan on changing that, so keep an eye out. Today, I want to talk maybe for like a couple of minutes, hopefully not longer, about simply Hegel, one of the more accessible introductions to a really difficult philosopher, maybe one of the single most difficult in the whole European tradition. Um, so I'm not gonna kind of, tell you. I'm not gonna try to like explain all of Hegelianism, but I want to give you sort of what the fundamentals that I got from this book, but also other books. This very short, accessible introduction by Robert Wicks, and I think if you understand kind of what I'm about to lay out, you're really well on your way to understanding not only Hegel but also his influence on all of subsequent political philosophy, certainly Marxism, certainly various kinds of conservative strands of thought. Um, and even in some ways various fascist movements, and even interestingly and ironically even something like libertarianism sometimes claims him. So he's one of these philosophers that really had that influence. So what is the absolute most basic way to break this down to kind of get you to understand why his influence is what it is? And fundamentally, what I would take away is you should understand that for Hegel, consciousness and history are basically intertwined. They're basically the same thing. History is the evolution of consciousness, which happens dialectically, and fundamentally the evolution of ideas towards maximum freedom. What does this mean? Does it mean you get to, own a flamethrower and run around naked? No, what it means is freedom as defined in a more Kantian deontological sense. Freedom is when you are most rational. History is a process of rationalization. This rationalization happens dialectically. It happens through the actions of many individuals, and it tends to be contained within the vehicle of the state, which is kind of like one of the most important vessels or engines of Hegelian dialectics. It is the teleological and eschatological kind of movement towards the end of history. The end of history is the absolute. What is that? That is the union of consciousness with sort of, you can think of it as God, you can think of it as sort of the metaphysical whole, you can think of it as sort of man, meeting the cosmos and sort of completing the evolution of consciousness and kind of apprehending all of existence. And in a way, this really comes from the division between the Enlightenment, the 18th century Enlightenment, which was very empirical, and of course they kind of rejected the rationalism of Descartes, or at least they thought it was incomplete. And then Kant at the end of the century comes along and unites these two strands of thoughts through the so-called Kantian Copernican revolution, as it's sometimes called, and of noumenon and phenomenon. And then Hegel builds off of that and basically says yes, yes, and then marries that idea to history itself. Okay. So again, I could talk way more about this, and certainly there's many more experienced people who could and should be doing that instead of me. But if you kind of want like a 3 minute, 4 minute kind of sort of tidbit to get you started with Hegel, what I just laid out is probably sort of what you should start with, and then this book here, and certainly many others are. This is within the Great Lives series. There's many other thinkers profiled. This would be a very good start. Thank you for watching.